Shalom, family. This is Yuda, the Pangea, before the great flood and the great shaking. What am I talking about? There is several reasons for this video. The first reason is the misconception of so many people. The idea that they can map out scripture and location to confirm where the land of Jerusalem is. In this video, I'm going to show you why that's not possible. And also I'm going to show you why it's so confusing when you read the Torah. This was something that came to me yesterday when I was trying to understand why does it seem so hard for people to understand what's in the Torah. And then it hit me. There's pieces missing. And I don't believe it's by any accident. Our friends, the colonizers, made sure that when we read the book, what they left untouched, we would struggle to try to understand what was being said. Where is this land? Where is that land? Who is this and who is that? This video is for people that have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. If you don't have those things, this is not going to make any sense to you. And I would like to express this one major important thing so that everybody's clear and we're on the same page. My job is not to convince you. My job, the only thing I got to do is tell you the truth. That's it. That's all I got to do. So let's get started. Pangea, before the great flood and the great shaking. The modern map of Africa is not upside down. We're going to start here first, because I hear that so much. So I'm going to deal with that. That map is not upside down in any objective sense, as so many people claim. But its orientation is based on colonial convention, not natural law. North at the top, it's a human choice. That's not a cosmic truth. So why the upside down theory is misleading? There is no universal up or down on Earth. The planet is not a sphere, and any direction could not be placed at the top. Ancient maps often place east at the top as if it was a ball or a sphere. North at top is a European invention. Now there are some people, a couple of people, that's kind of sideways with me right now over this very subject. I got comments from them or messages, and it was a book. They were determined to change my vision. They wanted to dictate my beliefs, my evidence, my discovery, my truth, because of their beliefs. I'm not the one that need fixing. They are. Now, they're not my enemies. We're not fighting and fussing. But this is a problem that occurs very often. So let me just say this. Because the only thing I'm responsible for is telling you the truth, that's the only thing I gotta do. I will not debate. I will not go around and around with you trying to uncover your false beliefs. I won't do it. I'm going to continue to do this. This is what I'm led to do, not convince you. If you have eyes to see and ears to hear, I don't need to convince you. These scriptures that I'm going to bring, they will do that. I don't have to do it. But it's only for those that can see and hear. So north at top is a European invention. This became standard during the age of European navigation, when the North Star and magnetic compasses guided explorers. South up maps do exist. And make a point. Inverting the map is common in Australia and parts of the so-called global South as a symbolic reversal of colonial dominance. These maps challenge the idea that Europe and North America should always be on top. Think about that. Think about who the colonizers are, and think about what I just said. These maps challenge the idea that Europe and North America should always be on top. That's not a coincidence. Africa's size is also distorted. The Mercator projection, still widely used, shrinks Africa while inflating Europe and North America. Greenland appears as large as Africa, although Greenland is 14 times smaller than Africa. How's that for following the map? The African Union is pushing back. Through the Correct the Map campaign, they've endorsed the Equal Earth projection, which restores Africa's true scale and challenges colonial cartographic norms. So what is the truth? The map is definitely not upside down. It's just drawn from biased perspectives. So let's get to the meat on the bone. This is Pangea on the left. On the right, this is what happened to the Pangea after the shaking. This lesson is going to explain these two different scenes here. We're going to discover why so many people think that Jerusalem is in America, Jerusalem is in South Africa, and the list goes on. So let's go back to the very beginning, before the flood, before the continent split, before the confusion. In the beginning, the earth was one big land. Geological timeline, mainstream science, the Pangea was formed. This is not true, but this is what science, pseudoscience, wants you to believe. It was formed 335 million years ago. Not. Then they say the Pangea began breaking apart 175 to 200 million years ago, the Jurassic period. This is also false. Noah's flood, if interpreted literally, 4,300 And 59 years ago, around 2348 BCE, based on Euphrates chronology, this creates a massive gap. Unless one rejects conventional dating methods and reinterprets Pangea as the pre-flood earth as described in Genesis. See, it's right there. It's been right there the whole time. And this is my point. It's right in your face, and you still couldn't see it. Don't feel bad. I didn't see it either. But this Pangea came to me 2 years ago, I believe. And I thought about it. I even did a video, but it was brief. It wasn't as in-depth as this one. But the Creator was showing me then. I just thought it was too big for me to tackle. So I brushed it off. And in these last few days, he has been disturbing me in such a way that I had to get it. I had to do it. So unless one rejects conventional dating methods and reinterprets Pangea as the pre-flood earth as it is described in Genesis. This is the Torah baseline. So if we treat Pangea as the original unified landmass before the division of nations, then creation year 0 AM Anno Mundi from Adam to Noah is 1,056 years. The flood year 1,656. Genesis chapter 7 and verse 6. Go look at it. Noah was 600 years old when the flood came. This means Pangea is pre-flood earth. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 6. The divisions of continents is post-flood consequence, possibly linked to Peleg's generation. In Peleg's days, the earth was divided. Go look at Genesis chapter 10 and verse 25. It was there the whole time, but nobody took the time out to break it down. I'm doing that now. So in this light, time from Pangea to flood is 1,656 years. That's right. There was no continent scattered across their so-called globe. All the land was called into one place. All the waters was called into their place. You follow me? So the time from flood to Peleg was 100 years. The time from Peleg to Abraham was 200 years. So the Pangea shaking, that was the burial of the Garden of Eden's witness. Don't worry, I'm going to break it down. You'll get it. The Garden of Eden described in Genesis chapter 2 was anchored by 4 rivers. Now this is the part that's got so many people screwed up. And I'm going to show you why. I'm going to break it down for you. The Garden of Eden described in Genesis chapter 2 was anchored by 4 rivers. Rivers. Pishon, or Pishon, the Gihon, Hiddekel, which is the Tigris, and Peleg, which is Euphrates. Now this is where y'all really need to listen. These rivers flowed from one source. I'm going to show y'all why there's so much confusion. Suggesting a central elevated landmass, likely the navel of the earth, which was the original altar. That was the Garden of Eden. After the tectonic rupture, whether during the flood or in Peleg's generation, the land fractured, and Eden was buried beneath shifting plates, sediment, and judgment layers. Why the rivers disappeared? You heard me right. Everything you see right now has been restructured. There was the flood, and then there was a second rupture. That second rupture was the worst earthquake in recorded history. It broke up the Pangea, and it sent land masses scattering to different areas. That's the reason why you find animal skeletons in places that they're not indigenous to. That's the reason why so many people think that the Grand Canyon must have been part of Egypt because of all the artifacts they're finding there. All the artifacts is real. Listen to me. So today, only the Tigris and the Euphrates are traceable. But even they are distorted by Babylonian overlays. The Pishon and the Gihon are lost. Y'all listen now. The Pishon and the Gihon rivers are lost to history, likely buried or renamed. Their disappearance signals geological upheaval, spiritual concealment, and prophetic judgment. The Gihon Spring is not the Gihon River that most interpret as the river. Why am I talking about that? Check this out. The scripture in 2 Chronicles chapter 32 verse 30 records King Hezekiah engineering a feat to protect Jerusalem's water supply. Y'all listen. This same Hezekiah also stopped the upper watercourse of Gihon. This is where they get screwed. Y'all stay with me. And he brought it straight down to the west side of the city of David. And Hezekiah prospered in all his works. Again, that's 2 Chronicles chapter 32 and verse 30. I'm going to show you why the Gihon that Hezekiah is dealing with is not the river. This verse refers to the Siloam Tunnel, a remarkable rerouting of the Gihon Spring, not river. Jerusalem's primary water source, though solid rock to the pool of Siloam inside the city walls. It was a strategic move to shield the city from Assyrian siege and preserve life within the covenant city. You'll also find a reference to this in 2 Kings chapter 20 and verse 20, which confirms Hezekiah's acts. He made the pool and the conduit and brought the water into the city. This act wasn't just practical, it was prophetic. Hezekiah preserved living water within the city of David, shielding it from enemy control. It's a powerful metaphor for Torah preservation under siege. So let's deal with this Pangea before we deal with Hezekiah some more. A long time ago, when the Creator made the world, he did not make lots of continents. He made one big landmass. If y'all go back and read Genesis and read it with open eyes, you will see. He called the land to come in one place and the waters to come in their place. Go back and read it. He didn't make a whole lot of continents like we see today. He made one big piece of land, like a giant puzzle that hadn't yet been broken. All the water was gathered into one place, and the dry land stood together. That land was strong, it was connected, and it was full of life. Listen, let the waters be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. Y'all think about that. Let me say that again. Let the waters be gathered into one place. All right? All the water is in one place. You know what that did? It left all the dry land in one place. It wasn't broken up. It was all in one place. Let the dry land appear. Genesis chapter 1, verse 9. This big land was what scientists today call the Pangea. But let's call it the unified land, the land before the fracture. Eden was at the center. In the middle of this land, the Creator planted a special garden he called Eden. It was like the heart of the earth. From Eden, one river flowed out, and then it split into 4 rivers that went in different directions. A river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it parted into 4 heads. Genesis chapter 2, verse 10. This is the reason why y'all struggle to understand what's in that book, because nobody is showing you this. And without this is the biggest piece of the puzzle. Without this piece, you cannot make that puzzle work. These rivers were called the Pishon, the Gihon, Hiddekel or Tigris, and Euphrates. They flowed across the land, reaching places like Havilah, where there was gold, and Cush, which some people call today Ethiopia. But back then, everything was connected. Every piece of dirt was connected to other dirt. It was one place. So the rivers didn't have to cross over oceans. They just flowed through the land. Enoch walked across this whole land. There was a man named Enoch. He loved the Creator so much that he walked with him every day. Enoch didn't need a map or a compass. He followed the stars, the rivers, and the voice of the Creator. He walked through this unified land from altar to altar in perfect peace. Enoch walked with the Creator, and he was not, for the Creator took him. Genesis chapter 5, verse 24. This land that we're talking about now was clean, uncorrupted, peaceful, and prosperous. Enoch's walk was kind of like a dance across the land. He didn't live in a broken world. He lived in a world that was whole, clean, and aligned with heaven. Then the earth broke apart. But people started doing bad things. This is what led to the Pangea. This is what led to the tectonic shift. The people started doing bad things. I made this really simple because I wanted to make sure you understood what I'm saying to you. They stopped listening to the Creator. They started mixing things together that should never be mixed. They hurt each other, and they forgot the covenant. So the Creator sent the flood. It wasn't just rain, but a giant shaking of the earth. The land cracked. Mountains rose and valleys sank, and the rivers changed. The big land broke into pieces. The rivers changed. The fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. Genesis chapter 7 and verse 11. This is when the earth stopped being one land. This is the reason now you got South America, North America, Germany, Russia, and all these different continents. This is how that happened. And this violence that I just spoke about is why it happened. The mixing of things that should never be mixed. This is when the earth stopped being one land. It became many continents, and Eden was lost. The rivers, they disappeared. People, they were scattered. This is where the confusion enters. Torah readers today are not taking into consideration of the change in the earth structure that took place during the flood of Noah. Rivers were either buried, rerouted, or completely removed. So when somebody tells you this is the original river that came out of Eden, that's a lie. The book is telling you that the earth was restructured. It was reorganized. So Noah, he survived in the ark. Only Noah and his family were saved. They floated on the water in a big boat. I told you I was keeping it simple. The boat was called the ark. Inside the ark was the seed of the covenant, the beginning of a new chance. After the flood, the Creator gave new lands, not the same old ones. He gave new lands to Noah's sons. This is the part that most of these so-called teachers are leaving out. I don't know. They must not know. This is important. This should really help clear up a lot of misunderstandings when you read that book, especially when you're trying to label sacred lands in certain parts of the continent. You can't do it. So after the flood, the Creator gave new lands to Noah's sons. Shem got the land of promise where Abraham would walk later. Ham got parts of Africa and Arabia. Japheth got the northern lands. But none of them got Eden. Eden was hidden. The altar path was broken. Now, our responsibility today as the covenant people, when we return to Torah and the covenant and the celestial laws, timekeeping, we will rebuild this altar. So today we live in a fractured world. You hear me? We live in a fractured world. It is not the same world that was created in the beginning. The land is not the same. The rivers are not the same. The land is split. The languages are confused. The rivers are scattered. But the memory of Eden is still inside of us if we just return to Torah. That's why I build scrolls. That's why I teach. That's why we walk like Enoch, even on this broken soil. Because one day that land is going to be healed. And that altar is going to be rebuilt. and that remnant will walk again in covenant rhythm. These rivers were like veins in the body of the earth, carrying water, life, and covenant memory. They helped people know where the garden was, where the altar was, and where the Creator presence flowed. Here's what happened to the rivers. The Pishon and Gihon, these rivers were part of the old world. When the land broke, they were buried, rerouted, or erased. There was a lot more going on in that flood than people teach today. That's why no one can find these rivers today. Nobody can find them. Hiddekel and Euphrates, these names were reused by the people after the flood. But they're not the same rivers. They're like echoes of reminders of what used to be, but they're not the original flow. The central river from Eden, gone. The garden was hidden. The altar was lost. The river system was fractured and scattered, much like the remnant today. So why does this matter? The disappearance of the rivers mean we can't use modern maps to find Eden. We must rely on covenant memory, not colonial geography. Restoration means rebuilding the flow, not of water, but of truth. This is why it's critical to understand what you read. Truth, alignment, and alter rhythm. Today's rivers are not the original. So the Creator sent a flood, not just rain, but a giant shaking of the earth. The land broke apart. The mountains rose. The valleys sank. And the rivers, they changed. The whole earth was fractured. That was a lot going on in that flood. We just thought it was all about the Nephilims. It was a whole lot more going on. The fountains of the great deep were broken up. Genesis chapter 7 and verse 11. After the flood, the original rivers were gone. The Pishon and the Gihon disappeared. They were buried, rerouted, or erased. The Hiddekel and Euphrates were renamed after the flood. The rivers we see today with those names, they're not the same ones from Eden. They're copies, not the originals. So when people say today, look, this is the Euphrates from Genesis, they're lying. They're mistaken. That river is not the same. We didn't realize that a whole lot changed after that flood. These rivers are not the same. This is why when people write in to me and tell me, yeah, but see the river, this river and that river, it goes over here, so that's why I know that the land is there. Bull crap. They don't know that these rivers were changed. They don't know these rivers are not the original. They don't know. They're scratching the surface. I'm digging a hole. So when people say, look, this is the Euphrates from Genesis, don't believe that. That river is not the same. It's a post-flood river in a fractured world. And when that world fractured, when that land fractured, it will never be put back together until we get ourselves straight. All of these rivers in the post-flood is borrowed names. They're using the same names that were given to those rivers back then, before the rupture, before the fracture. This is what's confusing so many people, because they're thinking that because these names are still being used, that the rivers are true. They're not true. This is what we weren't able to see. There was a lot changed after that flood. And it's time to wake up and smell the coffee. The real rivers were part of a world that no longer exists. The Creator changed almost everything in the earth structure during that flood. That's why we don't rely on modern rivers to find Eden. We rely on covenant memory. You will get that memory once you come back to your proper place, and that's Torah. On the Torah and on the signs the Creator gave us. Restoration isn't about finding old rivers. It's about rebuilding the altars. The tectonic shift was both judgment and mercy, hiding Eden until the remnant is ready to walk in covenant. So is the Euphrates River today the same as Eden? No, it's not. The original Euphrates was part of that old world. It flowed from Eden. It was connected to the altar. So if Eden has been buried, then ask this question. Where is this river called the Euphrates today flowing from? It cannot be flowing from Eden. Today's Euphrates rivers flows from the Armenian highlands in eastern Turkey, specifically from the confluence of the Murat and the Karusu rivers. This is far removed from the Edenic source described in Genesis. This is the proof of Eden being hidden right in your face. This is what I mean when I say read and study. Don't scan the pages. Don't get stuck in one spot. Dig underneath there. This is the proof you need that Eden has been hidden. Eastern Turkey is not the original location of Eden. Modern source of today's Euphrates primary headwaters, Murat River, originates in Kat, Turkey. The elevation is 3,520 meters. The Karusu River originates in Yakutat, Turkey, elevation 3,290 meters. These rivers merge near Kiban, Turkey, forming the Euphrates that we know today. It flows southeast through Syria and Iraq, eventually joining the Tigris in the Shat al-Arab, which empties into the Persian Gulf. The Genesis account says a single river flowed out of Eden and split into 4 heads: the Pisha, the Gihon, the Hiddekel, and the Tigris, which is the Tigris, and the Pirath, which is Euphrates. Genesis chapter 2, verse 10 to 14. So today's Euphrates does not flow from a central Edenic source, but from a fractured highland, a sign of post-flood tectonic division. Wake up, y'all. This supports the fact of Eden being buried. And the rivers were dislocated by judgment and geological upheaval. If the Euphrates today flows from eastern Turkey, what direction did the original Euphrates flow? The Euphrates may have originally flowed eastward or southeastward toward Mesopotamia. The southeastward flow of today's Euphrates echoes the original Edenic dispersion, but it's a fractured echo and not a full match. Genesis pattern in the Edenic flow, Genesis chapter 2 verse 10 says, "And a river went out of Eden to water the garden. And though from thence it was parted and became into four heads." This implies a central spring in Eden. One river flowing outward, then splitting into four directions. Euphrates, which is Peleg, is listed last, suggesting it may have flowed the furthest, possibly southeast. The modern flow today, fractured remnant, today's Euphrates flows southeast from eastern Turkey through Syria and Iraq. This direction aligns with the ancient Mesopotamian region, but the source is wrong. This is what they miss. It no longer flows from Eden, but from a fractured highlands. The central spring is buried and the river is dislocated. This means that the flow direction, it survived, but the source was severed. This is prophetic, y'all. The flow remembers. It remembers, but the altar is not there. So the Euphrates still flows southeast as a witness to Eden's buried pulse. But the Euphrates still flows in the correct direction, southeast, but its source has been severed, cut off from Eden. That directional echo is a prophetic witness, but the origin spring has been buried. Many readers of Torah struggle to understand the ancient text because they're interpreting a fractured world through a fractured lens, unaware that Eden was buried. They still think that Eden is somewhere out there hidden. It is, but you'll never see it. At least not today. Many readers of Torah, they struggle to understand this ancient text because they are still interpreting a fractured world through fractured eyes. Rivers were removed and tectonic shifts rewrote the terrain. Y'all listen. The tectonic shifts rewrote your landmass. So why Torah misunderstanding persists? It's geological amnesia. Most readers assume the Earth geography has always looked like it does today. Believe it or not, that's the truth. They don't account for the Pangea rupture because they don't know about it. And if you tell them, they probably wouldn't believe you. The flood sedimentation or the division in Peleg's days. So when Torah speaks of rivers flowing from Eden, they look for them on modern maps. And you know what they find? Confusion. That's why everybody's got a different opinion. That's why everybody's got a different location, because it's all confusion. And this is the truth. Overlaid cartography. Colonial overlays rename the rivers, redefine the borders, and erase ancestral flow. Babylonian and Greco-Roman distortions reassign sacred geography to imperial narratives. Readers unknowingly interpret Torah through post-judgment terrain, not pre-division Edenic flow. Did y'all understand that? So now let's put this puzzle together. Genesis chapter 10, verse 25. This is a key verse. And unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg. What's special about Peleg? For in his days was the earth divided. There you go. Peleg's role in the burial of Eden, the tectonic division, the Hebrew word for divided is Peleg, meaning split, cleave, or separate. In Peleg's days, the earth itself was divided, likely referring to the continental drift, plate separation, or massive geological upheaval. This could most likely be the moment when Pangea fractured, burying Eden beneath shifting plates and dislocating the rivers. You can't use the rivers we got today. That's why y'all spending so much time debating with each other about which way this river flowed and what land it flowed to. Ain't none of it right. So Peleg's generation saw this physical rupture that sealed Eden from the view. Post-flood dislocation. Peleg was born 4 generations after Noah, meaning the flood had already reshaped the terrain. Y'all know how heavy flood waters can change the landmass. Y'all seen how a flat land that gets flooded by rushing waters, and then when the waters recede, now you got a trench. Water is powerful. And the flood of Noah, you can multiply that hundreds, if not thousands of times. So the flood had already reshaped the terrain. But the division in his days was a second rupture. Who teaches you that? Not by the water, but by an earthquake and a tectonic shift. That's what happened. That's why you got North America, South America, China, Russia, Australia, all these places. That all used to be right here. This explains why the rivers of Eden are no longer traceable. They were buried or redirected during Peleg's time. Peleg marks the final burial of Eden's geography. Peleg's rupture was judgment on rebellion. After the flood, humanity rebelled again, building the Tower of Babel, resisting dispersion. Go read Genesis chapter 11. Read the whole chapter. Elah, the creator, responded, not with water, but with division, scattering languages and splitting the earth. Peleg's name means division. And in his days, the earth itself was cleaved tectonically. So, strategic concealment of Eden. Eden was the source of covenant flow of rivers, altar, and presence. After the flood, it was submerged. In Peleg's days, it was sealed. Tectonic shifts buried it beneath fractured plates. This ensured that no post-Babel empire could access it without Torah alignment. So what do we have? 2 judgments, 1 concealment. Shalom. Stay blessed.